Welcome everyone to Monday Match Analysis. I'm Gill Gross. It's become tradition around here on the first Monday of a slam. No disrespect to Auckland, no disrespect to Sydney. It is comment response. Bigger fish to fry. I always get an immaculate number of comments on my slam prediction videos, probably because it is a prediction video and people want to tell me if they agree, tell me if I'm an idiot, etc., etc. So I got a bunch of great comments. Some are positive, some are negative. I didn't really discriminate. The only thing, my only kind of method to my madness here is I try to not put a bunch of comments about the same thing. Other than that, it's all fair game, and I've compiled, I think it's 19 comments in one tweet altogether, and I'll go through them. There's going to be such a wealth of topics jammed in this. Hopefully it's about 30 minutes, so I can't wait to get going here. We're going to start with it would be almost crazy for me not to begin with this because most comments were about this very topic, and it had to do with me saying that me picking De Minaur over Rafael Nadal in this match. So there will be, I'll read a multiple of comments on this. Obviously, well, you know what? Let's just get right to it. Here's the first comment. Gill, I usually agree with your take, but not this time. For one, how can you say Djokovic has the toughest quarter? I don't think he does. However, he'll get through no problem. Makes no sense, bud. All right, it does make sense because just because the skill level of players in Djokovic's quarter, in Djokovic's path, is higher than the other top four seeds doesn't mean he's going to lose to one of them. I mean, I think those things are mutually exclusive. He can have the toughest path and still not lose. So I think that makes perfect sense. That don't agree about Jarry either. That's way out of left field. Yeah, it is out of left field, so that's why it's a dark horse. It should be out of left field. My thing with that is, who do I think is a dangerous unseeded player in that quarter? Didn't find anyone that I think is more dangerous as an unseeded player than Jarry, but we'll see. Could he lose today? Yeah. Zverev's quarter, I somewhat agree. However, I'll give him the benefit of taking a step further this time, round of 16. Okay. 3, I think Federer can get through, although I won't be surprised if he does not. Okay. 4, Nadal, it's a good chance he does not make the quarters. However, I never count him out. I don't either. But Berdych as a dark horse, LOL SMH, not this Grand Slam. I don't think he's in form yet and never has been very mentally strong. So he's had pretty good career results in Australia. He destroyed Edmund in straight sets. I watched the first set of that match. Berdych looks pretty good, so I stand by that. And lastly, this really takes the cake for me. You had Fed winning over Joker not even 2 weeks ago. LOL, what changed your mind? The comment section, thank you as always. Well, thank you for the comment. Okay, so I didn't say that. So in the first Monday Match Analysis of the year, I said Federer, with his age, probably won't improve. I think he'll drop down to number 5 in the world's rankings at the end of the year. I didn't say anything about who would win the Aussie or any of the slams. And then the next show, I raved about Federer's form and talked about Djokovic's loss to RBA. But I went out of my way to not tell you guys who I would have if these two met in the Australian Open. In fact, I ended the video by saying this is a two-man race, and it's between Djokovic and Federer. And I specifically did not tell you who I would pick on purpose. So I don't know. Maybe because I was raving about Federer's form, you just kind of made that mental leap that I picked him, but I didn't. And now I just wanted to put this reply in, and I don't want to focus on the negativity because it's mostly positivity. This is a little bit more negativity. I think it's good for me to kind of go over this every once in a while. I think it's good for you guys to hear. But this reply says, he is a Joker fan, clearly, so he sees Joker's quarter as the most difficult. And when he admitted that Federer's quarter is full of powerful players, he wouldn't say Fed has a difficult quarter and might not survive. he is like, no, that's actually good for Fed. I would say if Federer is able to pull this Australian Open title, he really deserved it. I agree. He would really deserve it, of course. But I really don't see Fed winning the Australian Open this year. So there's a couple things to unpack here. First of all, there's this funny thing that fan bases do where they get defensive. Like no, my player has the toughest quarter. I mean, come on. Who cares who has the toughest draw? I mean, the player who deserves to win, they're going to have to beat tough competition. No one's ever won a major without beating anyone good. Like, come on. So I don't understand this competition that fan bases have with each other about who has the more difficult path. If I'm a fan of a player, I want them to have the easiest draw that they can have because I want to see them succeed in the tournament. So why... I don't understand this logic. Okay, but let me just go to the first sentence. He's a Joker fan, clearly. I've been called a Federer fan. I've been called a Nadal fan, and this has been kind of more recent and more rare. But now I've been called a Joker fan. I'm a David Ferrer fan. I'm a proud David Ferrer fan. I have been for many, many years. And the fact that I've been called all three of these things, to me, means I'm doing my job. To me, it means that I'm calling it like I see it. During Wimbledon, the Djokovic fans were calling me a Nadal fan because I was picking Nadal. For the French, I mean, it's just went through cycles. In 2017, when Monday Match Analysis didn't exist, but I was still making tennis videos and Federer was dominating, I was a Federer fan. So now I guess I'm a Djokovic fan. I guess whoever is playing best, that's who I'm a fan of. I'm not going to dwell on it, but you'll never know how I feel about the top three. I like all three of them. I do. I like all three of them. Now, two of them I like a little bit better than one of them. But you'll never know who that one is because I'll never tell you. And based on my analysis, you'll never be able to find out because I don't look at a tennis match through that lens. All right, so that was a long one. Hopefully we'll go a little bit faster here. This is a tweet from Ben Hannon. Federer is the greatest attacker on hard court and grass court. Pretty tough to disagree with that first bullet point. Djokovic is the greatest defender on a hard court and grass court. Nadal is the greatest attacker and defender on a clay court. Pretty hard to disagree with that third bullet point as well. I think, and then he says, your recent video had an error regarding Djokovic as the greatest defender ever. So what Caleb is saying is Djokovic is a better defender than Nadal on hard courts and grass courts, but Nadal is better on clay courts. I have absolutely no issue with that comment. I think it's probably true. The movement on different surfaces is different. It's a completely different mechanic. So I would admit that much. If you're gonna make me choose between who's a better defender between Djokovic and Nadal, and that's such a tough question, such an interesting question. They're both so amazing. So it's tough. I give the slight edge to Djokovic. Here's why. I think that Djokovic relies on his defense to get the results, to garner the results he garners. I think he relies on it a little bit more than Rafa, especially recently. 2008 Rafa, it's kind of a different animal. He used to be a little bit more defensive. I would say when it's all said and done, let's say Djokovic and Nadal have equally good careers. Let's say one is not any better than the other. I would give the slight edge to Djokovic as a better defender because I think that more of Djokovic's results would have been due to his defense. I think Djokovic would kill to have a weapon like Nadal's forehand. He doesn't have that. He doesn't possess that at all. And, so I think that more of Nadal's success, so much of it comes from defense. I think a little bit more of it comes from offense than Djokovic. So if I'm going to put them on equal footing, and right now it's not over, so it's really hard to say when it's all said and done who will finish having had a better career. Let's assume that they have exactly the same. Well, then I think Djokovic is probably going to have to go down as the greatest defender of all time because more of his results can be attributed to that defense. Where Nadal, so much of his results can be attributed to his defense, but a little bit more so can be attributed to his offensive power, especially what is combined with Federer's forehand has been consistently the greatest weapon in tennis, and that is the Nadal forehand. Djokovic doesn't have really anything close to that. I don't think the Djokovic's backhand is quite as disruptive as the Nadal forehand is in a tennis match. Love the video, Gill, but unlikely De Minaur will beat Rafa unless he somehow redlines for 2+ sets. He's speedy but not aggressive enough. Rafa will end up beating himself against a grinder sort of player in best out of 5 sets. I think it's a misconception about Alex De Minaur that he's a defensive player. I want to talk about my prediction. I want to rehash that. But first of all, the first thing I need to point out about this comment is I think because De Minaur is small, skinny, and fast, he gets a reputation about being a defensive player, about being a grinder. That's not his game. I just don't agree with that. De Minaur comes to the net more than any of the next-gen players. No one comes to the net probably more than De Minaur in my observation. So there's that. He takes the ball early. He takes the ball on the rise. Now, he's a brilliant defender, but I don't think he's a defensive grinder type player. So I don't agree with that. I don't know. Are there more comments about... Yeah, here's another one. I like the analysis a lot, however, don't you think this is eerily similar to 2017 for Rafa? Coming off an extended injury layoff, no real momentum into the Aussie Open, everyone counted him off, and he almost won the whole thing if it weren't for a few clutch break points. Why is this year different? Why can't Rafa pull it off? He can pull it off. The reason I don't think he will pull it off, well, first, let's just go back to this comparison. And first of all, an astute comment, a really good comment, because there are some similarities between this year and 2017 Rafa. 2016 Rafa did not have great results on hard courts. Now, his last hard court tournament before he withdrew with his wrist injury was Shanghai. This year, it was U.S. Open. So he played a little bit further down. He also didn't withdraw from the U.S. Open. He got upset by Luca Pouille that year. So there was less withdrawals there. He played a little bit deeper, and he played Brisbane. He won 2 matches in 2017 in Brisbane. He lost to Milos Raonic. Not a great result, but still, at least he played. Also, he had 1 wrist injury, corrective surgery. Put that on the back burner. It didn't matter. Where right now, what Rafa's dealing with is a pattern of inactivity on hard courts, or a pattern of injury on hard courts that goes back really a year and a half. There's been a lot of withdrawals. There's been a lot of withdrawals and retirements. There have been 3 separate injuries, unless the leg injury that pulled him out of Brisbane is the same knee injury, and he's just calling it a leg injury. It appears that there may be 3 separate injuries in the last 5 months. His last tournament was the U.S. Open. He did not play Brisbane. So I would say this year is a much more extreme version of 2016. But that's an interesting comment. Before I move on, though, let me talk about this Nadal pick that people lost their minds about. First of all, it's an upset. Most people should not agree with me. When I make a bold upset prediction, people shouldn't agree. They should disagree. That's what makes it an upset. When I pick as my upset alert, for example, when I said Berdych is going to beat Kyle Edmund, that I thought was an upset pick. Turns out it wasn't. Most people agreed with that, and you could tell that because Tomas Berdych was a huge betting favorite in that match. He was almost a 2-1 favorite. I actually didn't know that when I said that Berdych would beat Edmund. But turns out that wasn't an upset. This match, this would be a huge upset. Now, in my self-evaluation, I will admit this. Before the tournament started, I anticipated that I would pick Rafa to be upset. And what that could have done for me is kind of closed my mind off to the possibility that no one in his draw was dangerous enough for me to really make that pick. But I had decided before the tournament, I think Rafa's vulnerable. And my job, in my opinion, is to communicate to you guys why I think Rafa's vulnerable, which I think I've done a ton throughout the last 2 weeks. So I'm not even going to go back and go over it. My job is to explain why Rafa's vulnerable. And I communicate that with you through my pick. Now, if you gave me even odds on Nadal and De Minaur, I would be crazy to put my money on with even odds on De Minaur. The thing is, this isn't even odds, and sometimes with upsets, you need the whole thing with an upset is that if the players played 10 times, the player being upset would win most of the time. Picking upsets, real upsets, is about having a hunch that this time might be different because of certain circumstances. It's picking, generally, a worse player to beat a better player. I'm not comparing Alex De Minaur and Rafa Nadal. They're incomparable. They're not in the same stratosphere. But have a hunch that Rafa's vulnerable, and I'm going for it. It's, in my opinion, a lot better than being boring. I don't know if you guys agree with me. People get upset. Rafa fans, I think, mostly get upset and I think all fan bases would get upset if they hear someone picking their guy to get upset. But tournament to tournament, it's going to differ. And this is just a tournament that I think Rafa's a little vulnerable in. I mean, it's an upset pick. It's a bold prediction. That's all. What do Nadal and Zverev have to do / show in the first 2 Australian Open matches to convince you they can go deep this tournament? Nadal needs to, I obviously show that he's healthy. He needs to show that there's no rust, which I think he will show. I don't think he showed that against James Duckworth yesterday. I thought, he can, I think Nadal can beat James Duckworth righty pretty much. So, and no disrespect to James Duckworth, but he's just not much of a threat to a player Rafa's level, even at, 80% of what Rafa can do. I thought he showed a little rust, but he took care of business. It was encouraging for Rafa. It was good for Rafa. So I'm not worried about the rust. It's more the health. And then the third thing is that under pressure, the new serve is going to be hold up, and that it's going to be a boon for him and not a burden. Sometimes it takes some time. We saw Djokovic try to change his service technique at last year's Australian Open. It was a disaster. So Nadal's serve looked pretty good yesterday, a couple of miles per hour faster, but let's see how it does under pressure. Mostly Rafa just needs to show me he's healthy. Zverev also needs to show he's healthy because he also has injury concerns coming in with, I believe, the hamstring. Other than that, Zverev needs to show me that he's going to rip and accelerate through forehands in big moments, that he's not going to shy away from being aggressive with that shot. He also needs to show me that he can dial it up between 135 miles per hour and 140 miles per hour on his first serve consistently. Next question. Hey Gill, what do you think of the ball boys carrying towels controversy? People say it's not their job, but I personally think even though they are named ball boys / kids, their main job is to carry stuff, and they seem to be happy with the job. These players spend many hours on court, and a little help and seconds saved helps them conserve energy, especially with the shot clock in play. So that was my first reaction to this whole towel thing. I thought, well, we just implemented a shot clock, and now we're going to make players take extra time to go get the towel in the corner of the court, where as a ball boy, which I was at the US Open for a few years, we run our butts off to get the towel and get it to the player as quickly as possible. I never had an issue with it. I don't mind sweat. I don't think sweat is gross or anything like that. I'm fine with that. So if people are germaphobes, I think it's a bit irrational, to be honest, but also respectable. I don't know. Maybe, in my opinion, it's irrational, but to each their own. However, if the players are totally okay with it and people think it's a better look on the sport, then I wouldn't have a strong opinion against it. Okay, this is a really long one. It's actually kind of hard for me to read. Okay, here we go. Gill, thanks for the analysis. I salute it that you are doing the show. I see some very hateful comments below. I see a few, but not many. Those always surprise me because I think if I would put out my ideas, I would be disappointed to get a reply like that, and somebody would degrade my persona just on the basis of one opinion. Okay, I guess I'll respond to that. It's part of the job. It's one of the worst parts of the job, but you know, I'm very fortunate to have what I have. I'm thankful for this, and this job is 90% amazing, 10% bad. That's in the 10%, is getting a notification on your phone that says you're an idiot. 10% of the bad, but you get better and better at dealing with that. And like I said, I get mostly notifications on my phone that say, new comment, you're great, which I always appreciate and love. I think Nadal is still the favorite against De Minaur, and I'm not convinced Raonic will go as far as you're saying. Okay, I'm going to just skip ahead here because there are some good questions in this. After the Australian Open, would you care to comment on the next year's planned Australian City Combined Championships? What do you think does the sport need another team event? Laver Cup, Davis Cup, this Australian Cup, Hopman Cup. I see a little trend here. Personally, they don't generally enthuse me. I think Laver Cup is very unique. I think Davis Cup is very unique. But if you oversaturate these team events, I think they should be special and different. So it concerns me. It really does. Especially because I've heard most of the motivation is monetary. Which, that's not surprising, but maybe somewhat disappointing. Also, another question on changing the sport. When I was young, I played a lot of table tennis. Changing the scoring system in table tennis from counting the set or game to 21 and then reducing it to 11, alternating serves after 2 rather than 5. Seemed like such a radical change and move. I was thinking about all these new ideas and rules they are bringing in, experimenting like they had it in India. Also a team, even International Premier Tennis League, blah, blah, blah. Okay, basically they changed the rules in table tennis to make it shorter. Longer tie breaks than deciding points and doubles. This is creating a bit of chaos in the scoring and the future of tennis, in my view. And this is a new reconsidered view because I was so very much against changing best-of-5 traditional Grand Slam matches. But going back to the table tennis example, I think table tennis, with the new scoring system, after everybody got used to it, made the sport more explosive and more exciting. Winning a best-of-5 short set match series would probably not definitely over if one of the players got a 2-sets-to-love lead. Or it would not be always that ominous to have to come back from 2-0. It would add more dynamic, more unpredictability. Because when Rafa, Roger, Novak really retire, the game just won't be the same anymore, and normally if you don't change, you can't survive. Sorry for the long post. Yeah, I normally don't post that long in these kind of videos, but I just thought this was interesting just because he had some insight about table tennis, and I like to, I wanted to just kind of share that because that's interesting. I know the scoring of table tennis. I didn't know it was ever different. So I think everyone is naturally resistant to change. My thing is I'm never anti-experimentation, not in the majors, but elsewhere. On the lower levels, you have to experiment. You have to find out what works. And right now, there's no experimentation. So everyone's just running their mouths, blah, 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 without any experimentation. And to me, it's meaningless. I don't want to speculate on what will be good and what will be bad. It all means nothing unless you try it. And once it is tried, I can tell you, and I think everyone else can form an opinion on whether or not they like it. So I know for the next gen finals, that is an example of experimentation. I didn't like it. Too many tie breaks. I don't like all the tie breaks. I think you need to decide tennis matches if you can with the normal, it's first to 4 points, win by 2. That's how tennis matches, in my opinion, should be decided, not constantly playing tie breaks. That's what I don't like about the Fast 4 system. Whoa, this one's shorter. For next Monday, when do you think Rafa, Roger, and Novak will retire? I don't love predicting these things. It's kind of, my guess is as good as yours, is as good as the next guy's. I don't think Rafa will play until 37 like Federer, or however long Federer's going to play. I think Rafa will be forced to retire a little bit earlier. So that's something that I've expressed. It has a lot to do with the way they train, where Rafa is much tougher on his body when he trains, also a little bit tougher on his body when he plays. Novak, I'm not really sure about. It's really hard to say. And that's something where I don't think we get a lot of clues about Novak. So I'm not sure. In a way, like his body, his flexibility and his balance, it seems to me that physiologically he has a really well constructed body for tennis that is built to last, especially the flexibility, so all that injury prevention stuff. But really the only way, it seems like he has very loose hips, and all that is working in Novak's favor. It's hard to say though. Gill, why do you have Djokovic edging Federer in 5? Federer has come through tight 5-setters 2 years in a row in Australian Open finals. It's mostly about how this matchup has went recently between Federer and Djokovic, where Djokovic has been really consistently edging out Federer. Federer fans wish, I'm sure, that Djokovic played Federer in 2017, and they just simply never played. So all of the recent history we have suggests that Djokovic kind of has Federer's number, which brings me to, okay, why will this time be different? And there's not enough at play in terms of changes in form and conditions and any kind of mental intangible things, any kind of tactical big time changes. There's just not enough that's different that would really have me, and I'll have much more data points come later in the week. Nothing's convincing enough for me to say, you know what, this time is going to be different from a time period from 2011 until now, where Djokovic has, for the most part, just gotten the better of this matchup. Does Nadal, with his revamped serve, hold any significance to his results here? Also, what could it possibly mean for the rest of the season? And if he reaches the quarters, does the whole paradigm of this tournament, and how do you see it playing out? If he reaches the quarters, he'd play Kevin Anderson. I think he matches up really nicely with Kevin Anderson if he's returning well, and Rafa would be 100%. He would win that match. Would he be 100%? By that time, I don't know. That's the question. But with his serve, I've always maintained he would have beaten Djokovic in that Wimbledon semifinal if he just got more help out of his first serve, which even on that grass court was doing nothing for him. I think that was the only thing missing from Rafa's game last year when he was healthy, was the big first serve. He has astutely, him and his team have astutely diagnosed that and are now taking steps to correct that. And I think that's very commendable, and I think it could very well play a huge factor. Will it play a huge factor this soon? Will it play a big factor in Rafa's first tournament of the season? That's what I'm very unsure about. Where are the timestamps for 40-minute videos would be very helpful. Here's the deal with that. For me to make timestamps, that would require me to go back and watch my entire video that I just made over again, and have to do that. So I just don't always want to do that. Now, for videos where I talk about 3 things, I'll go and I'll see where I transition, and I'll put 3 timestamps. You've seen me do that before. For a video like this, it's too much for me to just watch the entire video again so I can make timestamps. But I would encourage any of you who want to make timestamps, you'll probably be the top liked comment on every single one of my videos. Aaron Smith says, when you see some of the very young players like Shapovalov or Chung have some phenomenal success by making deep runs in several tournaments, but then dropping off the radar for months or even years, do you think it's because their success was just a statistical fluke or something went wrong in their gameplay? Or is that normal? So sometimes it's a statistical fluke. Like, I would say, like, Cecchinato making the French Open semifinals. I think something like that would be a statistical fluke. Shapovalov, Chung, I'm not so sure. The first thing to think about is expectation. Expectation is a very heavy burden on a tennis player. And you can see that on a micro level and a macro level. On a micro level, most players will play better in practice than in the match because there's no tension in the mind, there's no tension in the muscles, in the joints. It's a great feeling as a tennis player. It's a fantastic feeling to have that. And in a match, all of a sudden, tension everywhere. Expectation, pressure. These things make players just play worse. That's on a micro level. On a macro level, you have players who all of a sudden have this enormous expectation on their shoulders, and you might see a dip in level. With someone like Chung, that's kind of something I'm suspicious of. Maybe it was a statistical anomaly and someone with deficiencies in their game like Chung. First of all, both of them have some deficiencies that they need to work out. Both of them need to serve better. Shapovalov's serve is better than Chung, but still, both of them need to improve that shot. And I think that's the biggest thing for Shapo. For Shapo, I'll add, his improvement is slow, steady, but it exists. I don't think Shapovalov's trajectory is problematic. Chung, on the other hand, really didn't do much after making that semifinal last year. So Chung has a lot more to prove and a lot more to answer for. Now that qualifiers are finished, what do you think will be their inputs? Could some of them be a dark horse, especially Kokkinakis if he wins the first round? Then he will meet Shapovalov. I think it will be a sight to see. What about next? Who will face Djokovic in the third round? I think Shapovalov and Kokkinakis would be a really great match. And I think that would almost be sort of a toss-up. So I think a good call by, who's this? Shayla, I believe. It's an interesting call. The other qualifier that catches my eye is Viktor Troitsky, because he's done some things in his career. He's getting old, but you know, it's good to see him qualify for a tournament. Qualifiers did really well though yesterday. Generally, when two players are the same level and one got a main draw entry, the other is a qualifier, I always favor the qualifier because they get used to those outer court conditions. And which could be different in the practice court conditions, and also they just come in on a win streak, and win streaks are pretty hard to come by on the ATP World Tour, so they have that confidence. Not sure what you mean by saying the Australian Open surface doesn't suit Zverev's game. If it doesn't suit his game, why did he win the 2014 Junior Australian Open on the same surface? Well, clay doesn't suit Federer's game. Why did he make 5 French Open finals and win the whole thing in 2009? Because he's a great player. So surface can only change so much. When two players are very close in level, surface could be the difference. When you're the best player by a lot, it doesn't matter if the surface suits your game or not, you still might win. So that's your simple answer. You know, I mean, I can play. You get the point. I thought I saw Federer hit some high, heavy forehands, like a Rafa shot in the Hotman matches. Looked like a test of some variation to use in Melbourne. Was I seeing that right, or were they all just mishits? Also read that Rafa is working on quick winners like Federer does so well. It must be tough for the hard-hitting younger players to handle the variety these guys can throw at them. Already having more in the bag of tricks is awesome. Well, yeah, I think it's not just tough for the younger guys. I think it's tough for everyone. And the crop of player that I don't see in the next generation, with the exception of FAA, Felix Auger-Aliassime, is the defense-offense combination that the big three can provide, especially Djokovic and Nadal defensively. I don't see anyone have that combination of defense and offense. I see most of them, like Tsitsipas, Khachanov, Shapovalov, more offensively oriented. And then De Minaur also has a bit of a combination, by the way, but or more defense defensive-oriented like Munar or Coric. As for the Federer hitting with more shape, I didn't notice that. Maybe though. I'll look out for that. I didn't watch the match against Istomin. It was at 4 a.m. and yeah, I don't think I missed much either. I'd like to maybe talk about El Chapo a bit since the dramatic. Oh well, we already have. Since the dramatic rise of Coric, Tsitsipas, and Khachanov last year, he seems to have become sort of a forgotten man. Where would you place him among his next-gen counterparts? Example: who would he match up well against? Who would he not like to play? And if, say, he were able to pull off the win against Novak, how far would he be able to go in Melbourne? I mean, I don't know if that particular part of the question even deserves an answer, because beating Novak is going to be so tough. Who, if anyone, would he fall to? Yeah, so let's not talk about after Novak. I think it's better to just focus on Novak. My thing with Shapovalov is he's an offensive player. If he's on the defense, he's not going to be winning that many points. The problem is he's an offensive player that doesn't make enough first serves. You have to make more first serves if you're going to... If that's going to be your game, if you're going to be an attacker, well, you got to make a high percentage of first serves. When you do make a high percentage of first serves, they need to be good quality first serves, because when you're starting too many points at neutral, well, the point's not starting in your wheelhouse. You're not starting with your strength. A guy like Khachanov and Tsitsipas, they have way better serves than Shapovalov. Dare I say that's the biggest difference between those guys and Shapovalov. He's 6'3". He's getting pretty strong, so he needs to fix his serve if he wants to play the brand of tennis that he tries to play. This is the last question, guys. Every generation did better than the last, except the lost generation. Do you think we are heading downhill? Will we ever see another 10-plus slam winner? Great show, by the way. Thank you. I don't think we're heading downhill. Now, a lot of people say the game's not going to be the same without Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic. I agree. It won't be the same, but someone else will come up. I mean, you got to look at history. There's always the next guy. Every single time there's the next guy. And I don't think there's a pattern at the moment of generations going downhill. I think there was the lost generation that you referred to, and I think the poster boys of that are Raonic, Dimitrov, and Nishikori, who just never was able to challenge the very, very top. With the exception of them, I don't think there really has been any sort of downhill pattern at all. And I really do think this new crop between the age group of 19, I don't know how old Felix is because I would lump him in here, between the age group of 19 and 22, I think they're very strong. So I don't see a downhill trend. All right. So I hope you guys stayed for everything, because there were so many different things. I mean, that was amazing. You guys are amazing. Look for more one-off videos, reactions throughout the week. I got to pick and choose, basically. I got to look at the schedule and be like, okay, well, I'm going to stay up on this day. I can't stay up on this day because I can't go full nocturnal. I have other responsibilities. But I will be picking and choosing, and I will be watching important matches on replay when I must. So I'm looking forward to these 2 weeks, and enjoy the tennis, everyone. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.